Joining the MK party, it was a decision. It was an obvious thing to do. When I was impeached as a judge, it was a political decision. I could never have joined the ANC and the DA because both the ANC and the DA were behind my impeachment. So when the new kid in the block in the form of MK party came into existence, it was the obvious party to join. But in addition to that, the philosophy of the MK party, the people's mandate, including the constitution, these are things that are close to my heart. In other words, the policies, the overall policies of the MK party are not strange to me. I can live with them, I can relate to them. So it was the obvious thing to do. Now, the second question is my role as a leader of the MK party. I have no doubt that had President Zuma been allowed to be in parliament, he would have led the party. That was his wish. Unfortunately, the judiciary of South Africa did not allow that to happen. And he asked me to lead the party, and I'm grateful to President Zuma for having confidence in me. Here in the National Assembly, I'm the leader of the party and the official and the leader of the opposition party because we're now an official opposition party in the country. But country-wise, in the party, I'm the deputy president, the deputy to the president.
I don't want to go too much into your impeachment because that's done and it's over. But part of the reasoning or the decision to impeach you was because of your alleged remarks regarding President Zuma. Yes. So given the decision for you to have joined MK and those remarks were made regarding former President Jacob Zuma, did you actually say that? Did you persuade or try and persuade judges to favor and rule in favor of the former president?
Far from it. I never tried to persuade the judges to try and rule in favor of President Zuma. My evidence is very clear in that regard. All I did was to make a remark, and I said meaning we trust the process of judging. However, it's very, very clear to me that there was a determination of a political nature to get rid of me, to have me impeached and removed from the bench. If you look at the politics in the Western Cape, it comes as no surprise. The Western Cape is very racist. It's controlled by the Democratic Alliance. They have their own politics. We know the politics of the DA, and I find it alarming that today the ANC, which has been very critical and very vociferous about the racist policies of the Democratic Alliance, is now willing to go to bed with the Democratic Alliance.
You've written a report regarding racism in the Western Cape. Could you just take us through some of what you found?
The report was written in 2004, based on my own experience as a judge, and at that time I was already a judge president because I was appointed on the 1st of May, year 2000, as a judge president. It covered a wide range of activities that were going on. I'll give you an example. It was not uncommon before the racism report was issued that I would be approached by advocates, white advocates, because in the Western Cape, 95% of the advocates who are practicing are white. They would come to me and approach me in chambers and say, Judge President, we need a judge urgently to deal with this matter. And then I would look at the judges who are available. If there was a black judge available or any judge available, I would allocate the matter to them. Then there was a growing habit whereby if I had allocated the matter to a black judge, suddenly the advocates walk out of my chambers, they agree, they come back to me, they say the matter is not urgent. Now who's fooling who? How can the matter be urgent to warrant me being approached in chambers for a judge to be allocated to deal with that matter? But if I suddenly allocate a black judge who is a known quantity, that judge that they don't know or they don't like, they suddenly reach an agreement that the matter is not urgent. But if I allocate the matter to a white judge who comes from the bar, somebody that they know, that they like, they carry on. Those were some of the instances. The other instances quoted in the racism report, whenever we spoke in our own indigenous language, I'm Zulu speaking, right? Our white colleagues, Afrikaner white colleagues in particular, would say, we can't hear you. And it became clear to us that we can't speak in our own language, but they would speak in Afrikaans, and we're expected just to draw the line. That's sheer racism. We must respect each other. If you have a right to communicate in your own language, I also have a right to communicate with my own colleague in my own language. And this is Zulu is one of the official languages in this country and is widely spoken in South Africa. Those are just two examples, but other examples are the other thing that I notice is briefing patterns. We still have that problem even now. The report was published in 2004, but even today you have a problem about skewed briefing patterns. When I say skewed briefing patterns, this is what I mean. You expect an attorney to brief an advocate irrespective of race. You must be briefed on the basis of your competence, your capabilities, and irrespective of race. But what we noticed was that black advocates do not get work in general from white attorneys. White attorneys would brief white advocates. The problem with that is this. Judges are drawn from the pool of practicing advocates and attorneys. If you do not capacitate black practitioners by giving them work, at the end of the day, you end up with people with a pool of candidates that is not ready to be appointed to the bench. And whites are always ready because they are given work by other white people.
So your report is obviously quite extensive, and I mean, we don't have time to go through all the examples and everything and all your findings, but that report was released in 2004, you say, but you were only impeached?
I was only impeached last year.
Okay, so what did you do about it? What could you do about it? Because you were judge president for some time, you were within the judiciary for some time, so what did you do to address that? Could you do anything? Did anyone try and listen to you?
In part, yes. I did quite a lot to address the things that I became aware of. For example, the issue where a matter is allocated to a judge and suddenly there is an excuse for that matter not to be proceeded with. We began to issue a lot of practice directives regulating how matters are to be dealt with, and where a matter has been allocated to a judge, I became even stricter. If a matter is allocated to a judge, that judge must deal with the matter and not find an excuse. Because forum shopping is where you choose a particular judge. Inevitably, white litigants or white lawyers went for white judges. So I did something to try and address that. Look at it differently. This is my second point. Had my concerns raised in the racism report, for example, about skewed briefing patterns, about racism, had they been addressed, we would not be having the kind of problems that we still have today. Look at it differently today. Nobody would be appointed as a judge in South Africa today if you go to the Judicial Service Commission and say, number one, I'm a racist. Number two, I hate black people. 3, I hate white people. 4, I hate women, and so on. That's racism and sexism, which I exposed in the report. Had that been addressed more than 20 years, almost 20 years ago, we would not be here. And if, for example, the Minister of Justice or the ministry had addressed the issue of skewed briefing patterns, we would not be where we are. One obvious way of addressing that was going to be the following: even pass guidelines or legislation to say whenever there is a white senior advocate, that white advocate must be accompanied by a competent black woman, or I'm using black generically to include whites and Indians. So it needed some kind of regulation and intervention from the ANC-led government.
That the issue of racism within the courts, according to what you found and what you wrote,
Yes.
will ever be addressed? Do you think it will ever be resolved? And that's a very broad question.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
There is ongoing pressure to address both sexism and racism in the judiciary. Let's face it, South Africa has only been independent for 30 years. Everywhere in the country there is racism. It was absurd for the legal fraternity in the Western Cape to deny racism, because basically what they were saying, there is racism everywhere in the country, but not in the legal fraternity. We're not fools. It never made sense. It was a bad denial, denying the most obvious thing. I think they really like to be told racist, because the truth hurts. You can't have a situation whereby racism is all over the country, except in the judiciary. That's nonsensical, to say the least.
Do you think that you'll ever sit on the JSC? I know that this matter is currently in court. You've resigned from the JSC, but do you think that you will ever get an opportunity to sit on the JSC?
Well, resigning from the JSC was strategic. Let me explain that. Our party has one seat on the JSC. Now, there was litigation, and as expected, the South African courts ruled against my sitting on the JSC. The result was that Umkhonto weSizwe Party was not represented on the JSC now when the JSC met. Now, the matter is still pending before the Constitutional Court. The JSC is going to sit again in April next year and in October next year. I doubt if the Constitutional Court will have had time to pronounce on the matter. So if I did not resign, considering that there is no provision for an alternate member to sit, the Umkhonto weSizwe again would not be represented in April and in October. So it was to allow for the process to unfold so that we as Umkhonto weSizwe, we can then redeploy somebody else in my stead until my legal problems, which are created by the Democratic Alliance anyway, until such time that those problems have been dealt with. Whilst you're on that, courts in South Africa are courts of law. They've always been courts of law, not courts of morals. But when it comes to Hlophe, even if the Constitution is very clear, they look for something else and say this is immoral. Since when are courts courts of morals? They are courts of law.
I hear you, but the argument, though, is that because on the basis of what you were impeached on, the argument is that it wouldn't be ethical for you to be raising questions to potential judges or candidates given the reasons and the basis that
Thank you. I will deal with that. There is a judge in America, Justice Hastings. He was a judge in the state of Florida. He did exactly what I'm doing today. He was the first black judge ever to be impeached in America. He was a judge in the state of Florida. After he was impeached, he joined politics. He became a congressman. Thereafter, based on his own expertise, he was appointed and deployed to the Judicial Service Commission. Exactly what I did. There is absolutely nothing wrong. Just remember one thing. The fact that I was impeached does not and can never mean that my brain is dead, right? Judges or politicians, that's what I am now, do not sit on the JSC for purposes of discipline. They sit in order to interview candidates. When it's time for discipline, it's members of the profession who sit on the JCC, that is the Judicial Conduct Committee, or the Judicial Conduct Tribunal. Parliamentarians only get involved as and when the matter is referred to the National Assembly. On the Judicial Service Commission, for purposes of interviewing candidates for judicial appointment, could in any way tamper with the process, because I'm not sitting on discipline. And just remember, I was not impeached for incompetence. Never impeached for incompetence. Nobody has ever suggested, after almost 8 years, that I'm incompetent. If anything, you only have to look at my contribution to South African jurisprudence. And I can brag even now, 27 of the judges who are permanent in this country were produced by me. They were my students. Right here in the Western Cape, I have 6 permanent judges who were taught by me at varsity. And you still want me to believe I'm incompetent? Far from it.
Okay, let's move over to your role as the leader of the MK Party in Parliament and also the Deputy President of the MK Party. How is it being the opposition, especially because of who MK is, what it stands for, and also the great performance, and I think many didn't expect such a great performance of the MK Party in the recent elections?
Right. Well, the great performance, let's start with the great performance of MK Party in the elections. We in the MK Party, it came to us as no surprise. Our message was very clear to the electorate, and this is now People's Manifesto. And we did our door-to-door campaign, and everybody else every wise person was fed up with the ANC because it had sold out. So getting the overwhelming support that we had did not come to us as a surprise. We were expecting it. If anything, we know we deserve far more than what happened. We know the results were rigged, right, by the ANC, by the IEC, and it favored the ANC and it favored the Democratic Alliance. So they worked on this in advance. That much is clear. Now, being a leader of the official opposition has challenges. We see ourselves as the MK Party, no doubt as an official opposition, but at the same time, Umkhonto Party, there are things that we want to challenge as we go along, where necessary. We are not here to comply or just to toe the line. We are here to challenge the status quo where necessary. If we feel this is colonial, it doesn't serve the interest of South Africans today, it is our role to do that. So we regard ourselves as an official party, but our role is slightly different to the role of ordinary opposition parties. And also given the GNU, the so-called Government of National Unity, I'm saying the so-called because we all know it is not the Government of National Unity. It has created a situation whereby ANC has managed to pull certain parties together, that is the Democratic Alliance, the IFP, and so on. Interestingly, when you look at their funding, you can see what they have in common. When you begin to unpack it and look at who is funding them, you can see why they are together. Now, the existence of the so-called GNU is creating another concern or aspect for us, which means now we have to find a way to survive and to mobilize forces. Hence, we have the Progressive Caucus. We took a firm decision. We're not going to cheat on our voters. We're not going to fool them. We will remain outside the so-called Government of National Unity. South Africa will never be a one-party state. If we were to foolishly join the Government of National Unity, what are we doing? Firstly, we'll be betraying our voters, and secondly, we would be basically creating a situation whereby South Africa becomes a one-party state under the banner of the so-called Government of National Unity. So we're playing a very important role to uphold the Constitution, stay out of this government, and be an official opposition and get ourselves ready to come and form a government of this country.
Would you only join the Government of National Unity? What would contribute to you wanting to join the Government of National Unity, or for now it's just completely off limits?
Our position is very clear. We have a mandate. Our voters, the electorate, have given us a mandate based on what we were saying to the voters and when we were campaigning. And nothing will make us betray our voters. The Government of National Unity as it stands is going to collapse. It's already dead. What puts them together is money and blue lights. I mean, take somebody like Mackenzie, who is the leader of the Patriotic Alliance. You ask yourself what it is that he has in common, what it is that he can offer to the South African public. The man basically virtually knows nothing in terms of politics, but he is there conveniently. He's excited to be part of the Government of National Unity. It's nice to be protected, have bodyguards around you and blue lights. That's what it's all about. We don't want to be dishonest and cheat our voters. We're not about the blue lights brigade. We're here pursuant to to the People's Manifesto, people have given us a clear mandate. Let me ask you the following. Let me consider the following scenario. There are people who did not want to vote for the ANC and voted for other parties. For example, IFP. That is a fact. There are many voters who did not want to vote for the ANC and said, all right, let me vote for the IFP. But without consultation, the IFP has gone into the government of national unity. We did not want to do that as Mkondowesis. We will never do that.
How does it make you feel as the MK party that you got almost 50% in KZN, but you're not governing that province?
Well, we got more than 50%. We know that the votes were rigged, and then the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Madam Helen Ziller, said we are dogs, right? And the MK party, we are dogs. As far as I'm aware, there are dogs which are males and there are dogs which are females. If she says we're dogs, the feeling is mutual.
The fact that you're not governing KZN, I know you keep saying that the results were rigged, but
yes,
you've also withdrawn that case out of the courts.
That's not altogether true. We withdrew the case from one court. There was a reason. Litigation took place before a wrong forum. We realized, I think if I remember well, we went to the electoral court instead of the high court. So withdrawing, we had to withdraw because it was the wrong forum, but we believe we have very strong prospects of succeeding. The case is still pending before the courts.
So you had the evidence to prove that the elections were rigged?
We have the evidence. Our own election officials went to various voting stations, and we were not stupid. We captured some of the results from the various VDs. There is evidence. We captured that on cell phones. But then when it came to counting, there were disparities between the results that we captured at various voting stations and what was ultimately captured, right? In the KZN, you can go to KZN now. You drive anywhere in KZN, 90% of the people are MK. You ask yourself, what suddenly happened to them?
Let's speak about the party beyond President Jacob Zuma, because many are saying that this party is not going to last. Unfortunately, as humans, we all have our time where we no longer will be here forever. But what happens beyond that? Is there going to be an MK party beyond President Zuma?
The starting point is this. One must acknowledge that President Zuma is the glue of the party, right? We all went to MK party largely because of President Zuma, but we're all aware President Zuma will not be there forever. So the challenge now is upon us who are relatively younger leaders to run with the baton and assist him as far as we can. We try and do that. For example, President Zuma cannot be all over the country. I run around as far as possible in an attempt to close that gap. What would happen when he unfortunately passes? There is no doubt there will be an MK party even way beyond. As much as he is the glue of the party, as much as we continue to derive guidance from President Zuma, here we are in Parliament who are surviving without President Zuma, who have managed to gather a pool of suitably qualified MPs, and we're only 48 for now, and yet notwithstanding that, we have made a huge impact. President Zuma was very careful in selecting or choosing people. He didn't just take people who are loyal to him. I believe each and every one of us here, we came here because we are competent. We deserve to be here. So it would be a mistake to think, if you are with me in that regard, it would be a fundamental mistake to think as soon as President Zuma passes, therefore we will be dead as the MK party. I have no doubt we would carry on and spread the word and the message that we have learned from President Zuma. MK party will continue to survive even way beyond President Zuma because we have a message and we want to liberate the oppressed masses of this country.
Yeah, MK party is going to survive even after Jacob Zuma has passed on. Yeah, that's Judge Hlophe, the impeached Judge Hlophe, who's now called Dr. Hlophe, who is the leader of the MK party in parliament, has just spoken and showed this young girl how it's done. So guys, please leave a comment and tell me what you guys think about this interview, because Judge Hlophe has highlighted so many important things that are happening in politics. The goal for MK was not to win, but also to expose the cracks that's happening in politics, the favoritism, the way DA and ANC has been working together. They've planned this GNU way before MK arrived, but to their surprise, MK arrived and they showed them that in KwaZulu-Natal, MK is loved everywhere. Even though they lost because their votes were rigged, and we know that, and we saw evidence, we saw people taking videos and showing us that there are ballots that have been taken home by people, and some of them, they were thrown away, they were burned down. Guys, SA politics, they are boo. It's going down. I love SA politics. It's very entertaining, but at the very same time, you are holding us back to our freedom. We want our freedom, guys. Between us and freedom as black people, like total freedom, equality, politics is wasting our time. Revolution is knocking on the door like this. Sooner or later, guys, politics won't exist if they carry on like this and keep playing games. This is not a game. Don't play with our feelings. Anyways, see you at the next time. Brrrah.